And now, may I request our distinguished panel of reactors to share their views with us. Shall we begin with Mr. Guillermo, please?
Thank you, and good afternoon. Thank you, first of all, for inviting us here to participate in this conversation on poverty, a very important issue for all of us in the business community. And let me also thank and congratulate our three professors for the papers they delivered, which so comprehensively and succinctly identify some of the key issues that we face in why we have poverty, why it continues to persist, and what we should do about it. We are faced, I guess, with both a corporate challenge and a public challenge. For the corporations, as you know, corporate social responsibility projects have played a large part in our corporate lives. Many of us have set up corporate foundations and CSR programs and projects, some lasting for the last several decades already. And I guess the question that we always ask ourselves is, after all the amount of social investment made by private corporations to solve public issues, why do these problems continue to persist? Why don't we seem to be making headway with these problems, in solving these problems? And the challenge for us, I think, in the business community, speaking as a corporate foundation, is one, we need to scale up and target at the same time our social investments in key sectors. If we review the corporate philanthropy and spending on CSR by corporations over the years, we have been involved in a broad spectrum of projects in a wide range of sectors, from education to health to microfinance to community development to environment, but largely maybe scattered among a series of small projects. The trend now among the people who work in corporate philanthropy is to try to scale up the projects from pilot scale to very large scale projects, and to team up in larger partnerships and networks, as well as networks involving not only other corporate foundations, but international agencies and government agencies themselves. So I think we will need to tap into the research of analysts and academics who analyze the problems and the causes and the proposed solutions for the poverty, to try to focus our spending or focus our targets on the sectors. An example of scalability, I guess, just among the many that we have ongoing right now in the business community, is, if you will notice, in the last 5 years, greater emphasis on spending on education, particularly basic education at the grade school and high school levels. Much less emphasis, I think, on tertiary at the moment, because the problems are so large at the elementary and the high school level. And the focus has been on public education rather than private education. And there's a marked shift if you take a look at the spending of companies and corporate foundations and private philanthropists even in this field. In the next few years, I anticipate that this would begin to consolidate around larger programs rather than independently run projects, because we're finding that the small independent run projects have limited results or impact that can be seen. And the impact might be limited to specific geographies even, and they are quite small. And if we take a look at in the context of overall educational standards, we are not really seeing much of an impact yet. But I would anticipate in the next few years you will begin to see much more consolidation in this area. That would be an example, I guess, of the scaling up mentality that we see today among corporate social responsibility officers and foundations. Beyond education, I would see this happening also some more in the fields of environment and possibly in the health sector. Though I think if I were to assess the sectors, health would be lagging seriously behind spending in education and environment by the corporate foundation sector as of the moment. But that is the challenge, I guess, that we face within the business community, how to target and how to scale up. And of course, in scaling up, how to increase our overall social investment in these projects. We are putting a sizable amount of corporate profits into these projects, and given the conditions within the country, I think this will have to continue and increase over time. The problem is this is a bit of a double-edged sword for all of us, because corporate donors, both private and companies themselves, always begin to ask those of us who operate the projects, how far do we go, how much do we give, and are you beginning to take on too much work such that these roles and responsibilities are in fact being not addressed or being abdicated by agencies which need to address those particular issues. Our response has been that we need to continue to partner up and leverage these resources between public and private resources to try to address these issues. So we're going to have to continue to convince donors that we need to give in increasingly in larger amounts to the projects. What are the issues, aside from the many here which all concern us, what are the new issues on our radar screen these days, at least speaking for Ayala Foundation and the work that we do? These are not, these are new in the sense that they've always been around as concerns, but our plate has been so full we've not been able to focus on it as much as we'd like to, but we've made a commitment now to focus on some of the new issues. I'd like to highlight just two of them actually right now. One I think was brought up in the paper of Dr. Canas, really, which is the whole issue of migration. We think it is not, we don't have enough evidence, at least with us, to tell us, what are all the risks and all the gains out of migration. We are somewhat concerned that when we take a look at the demographic profile of the people leaving, the average age of people leaving the country put them at pretty well the prime of their lives, about 28 to 35 years old. We now see a marked trend that more and more of them are women, up to 70% are women in recent years. And the third is that probably the scariest for us is that they are educated, very well educated, with college years or full college degrees, who tend to be leaving. So the scary thought in our mind is that if there's a huge gap in the educational attainments between those who leave and those who stay, then what problems will we spawn in the future? So that's one of the issues that we'll be looking into more closely. We're at the very early stage of the research and would welcome the inputs, I think, of the university professors here to help us read more into this particular challenge. And finally, I think there is a public challenge for all of us. Elections are just 28 and a half months away, and I think the question was raised, are the contenders prepared to face these challenges? I have an even more basic question, are the contenders even thinking of these issues? And are they thinking of possible solutions? Intuitively, my guess is no, they're not, because they're more concerned about who's going to run and who's going to win. Now, will they change that behavior in the next 28 and a half months? I doubt it, actually. And the reason I doubt it is because unless there's public clamor to focus on these issues, unless voters themselves begin to force the issue, then people will not make the change. So I think I'd like to close with that particular challenge to all of us. How do we begin to change the mindset of the contenders to get them focused on what it is we all need to do? It has to be driven by the voters and by the citizens, because by themselves, let me assure you, they will not do it. Thank you.